Okay, Freilach Hachaim, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're continuing in the Hachaim. We're in Parshat Vayigash. We're actually going to learn the last pasuk in this week's Parsha, a fascinating Hachaim, a very interesting Hachaim that delves into certain inyanim, why specifically Klal Yisrael had to go to Mitzrayim. Of all the places to go, why did they have to go to Mitzrayim? What was in Mitzrayim that Klal Yisrael needed to go specifically for, in order, as we're going to see, to get to Matan Torah? They had to stop off in Mitzrayim in order to get eventually to Matan Torah, to Har Sinai. Why is that? So the pasuk says, now interestingly, the 5-6 psukim before this pasuk has nothing to do with this pasuk. The last psukim, the last 10 psukim, discuss certain laws and edicts that Yosef HaTzadik put in place into Mitzrayim regarding who has to pay taxes to Paroi, who doesn't, who's exempt, and other inyanim regarding the relationship that Yosef HaTzadik had with the people of Mitzrayim. The last pasuk says a completely different topic, seems to be very much out of place. Moreover, the pasuk seems to be saying things that either we know or is not necessary for us to know. So let's see the last pasuk in this week's parsha. Vayeshev Yisrael be'eretz Mitzrayim. Yisrael settled in Eretz Mitzrayim. Now we already know this. Why is the pasuk repeating this to us? Be'eretz Goshen. We're in Eretz Mitzrayim. Be'eretz Goshen. You don't really have to say both. You could have said Be'eretz Goshen, which is in Eretz Mitzrayim. Now many times you usually say the city, then the country. Why did it say the country, then the city? That's another question the Hachaim discusses. Then comes a very interesting phrase, Vayechezu ba. Now, what this means is that they acquired property. Now, the Lashon HaKodesh word should have been Vayeknu. They did a kinyan. Moreover, says the Hachaim, why do I need to know that they acquired property? It's necessary for us to know that. I mean, the Torah is not a historical fact. What does the Torah want to tell us? And in addition, if they wanted to teach us specifically for some reason that they acquired property, like we said before, the word should have been Vayiknuba, not Vayechzuba, like they grabbed it. What are they grabbing? Why are they grabbing property? Then it says Vayifru Vayirbu Ma'oid. They exceedingly became fruitful and multiple. They exceedingly had a lot of children, a lot of descendants. Okay, that makes sense, but it seems to be a little bit unnecessary. Why is it necessary for us to know this? So the Hachaim is going to explain a very fascinating thing. In order to understand the Hachaim, let's give an Hagdama. We learn throughout the Hachaim Hakadosh, this is especially very prevalent in Kabbalah, in Hasidus, that Klal Yisrael's job throughout the Galus is to collect the Nitzotzes HaKedusha that were spread out in the world by the Chet of Adam HaRishon and in the beginning of creation. When Hakadosh Baruch Hu created the world, not to get overly complicated, the worlds couldn't sustain the aura of Hashem, and there was what's called Shviras HaKelim, in addition to the Chet of Adam HaRishon. So our job is to go through the Galus and to collect these nitzotzes that were spread out. Now, when these nitzotzes were captured by the Tzara Tumah, they used it for their own purposes. Mitzrayim, as we know, was the number one place of Tumah, the hardest place to leave. Why? Because as we're going to see in this pasuk, that was the greatest concentration of nitzotzes hakdusha. Now, there's two types of nitzotzes. There's one nitzotzes that when we do Torah, when we learn Torah, when we do mitzvahs, when we have Yisurim, we raise them up and it goes up to Shemayim. There are other nitzotzes that are really nefashos, that were grabbed by the Tzara Tumah, the Sitra Achra, and when we release them, those neshamas have to come back into this world as a body. Neshama is part of the way Hashem created the world, is that every neshama has to come into this world into a body, and to do whatever job it has to be done. Now, in order for us to have gotten to Mitzrayim, to Har Sinai, we needed 600,000 nefashos. The only way for us to have gotten such a large concentration of nefashos in such a short period of time, notwithstanding that we were there in Mitzrayim for 210 years, was to go to the place that had the greatest concentration of nitzotzes hakdusha, or nefashos that were trapped by the Sitra Achra, which was in Mitzrayim. And the pasuk is going to teach us this is exactly what Klal Yisrael was doing in Mitzrayim. And we see that as soon as Klal Yisrael started to do Torah and mitzvahs, one of the reasons that Yehuda went to Mitzrayim was in order to build a yeshiva so they could learn Torah, they could start the process of mining out all the nefashos that were captured. When the nefashos were captured, Mitzrayim was no longer, the Mitzrayim that we know ceased to exist. So this is what the pasuk is teaching us, what Klal Yisrael was doing in Mitzrayim. Was Parshat, once the famine was over, they should have went back home. But we know that they didn't. And the Hachaim is going to explain the Yisoid, the reason why we had to go to Mitzrayim, why we had to be there for the amount of time that we had to be there, and what was the result. The result was we had 600,000 men between the ages of 20 and 60, which allowed the Shekhinah to come into this world on a certain level that allowed us to get the Torah. So let's see now this insight. Lama kafal loime be'eretz Mitzrayim be'eretz Goshen. Why did the pasuk have to repeat twice be'eretz Mitzrayim be'eretz Goshen? Either it should have said in Mitzrayim, or if you wanted to be more centralized, more specific rather, it should have said be'eretz Goshen. Oid makeshev v'shayches levayifru in Vayeshev Yisrael. What does the fact that Klal Yisrael settled in Mitzrayim has to do with the fact that they were very multiple and fruitful? Okay, and therefore the Hachaim explains his Bor HaKosov, Api Mashakasavnim Bapasa Ki L'Goy Gadol. Hakadosh Baruch Hu told Yaakov Avinu, I will make you into a great nation. Ki Sibas Yiridas Mitzrayim Hi Lahalos Nitzotzis Akdusha Shenespaz Rebo Shama. That the purpose of Klal Yisrael going to Mitzrayim was to raise up the Nitzotzis Akdusha that were collected and trapped in Mitzrayim. That's why specifically it says Klal Yisrael settled in Mitzrayim. Why? We know that Mitzrayim, al pi Kabbalah, is known as the source, is a klipa. There's a koyach hatuma that's called Mitzrayim. So when it says Vayeshev Yisrael be'eretz Mitzrayim, the Hachaim explains that Klal Yisrael settled in the klipa itself in order to what? To get the nefashos that were trapped there. How do we know that? Because he learns that out from the next words, be'eretz Goshen. The word Goshen is also from the Lashon Hagosha, come close. Like Vayigash elav Yehuda, like Yehuda came to Yosef Tzaddik, so to Klal Yisrael went into the klipa in order to get close to it, in order to pull out Kisham Hukshu, called Nitzotzei Kedusha, because all the sparks of Kedusha were brought into specifically Goshen. Hashem did it in a way that they should all be in the place that Klal Yisrael resided. Right? You ever wondered why Klal Yisrael resides in certain places throughout the Galus? So if you look at it Parshat, if you look at it through the normal Derech HaTeva, they settled in places where there was commerce, near the ports, near financial centers, near business districts. But really Hashem was mesoiviv in a way that the areas where Klal Yisrael was over the generations, where they were centralized, where they were specifically lived, were areas of the most kedusha that were trapped. Right today, for example, you have in the cities that you see that Klal Yisrael is living and they were growing and they were focused on. That is the place that has the most kedusha, as opposed to if you look out in the countryside and different areas, there's not always large communities there. There's a reason for that. We look at it, because there's no jobs there, there's no businesses, there's no yeshivas there. But the reason is because there's no sparks of Kedusha, or minimal sparks of Kedusha, that's much easier to collect. All you need is a year to go by there, to make a bracha, do a mitzvah, learn some Torah, so on and so forth. And that is what the Hachaim has explained. Kishamo hukshu kol nitzotzei Kedusha. Be'emtzus anaf HaKedusha shu Yisrael. Through the presence of Klal Yisrael, they were able to bring forth the Kedusha. Our neshama acts as a magnet. When we do mitzvahs, when we learn Torah, when we overcome Yisurim, we overcome challenges, we now strengthen that magnet and pull out from the clutches of the Tzaratuma the nitzotzis, the sparks of Kedusha. Shu bechinas eben hashayeves l'doimaloi. V'amaloshin yachid, ramas alayosim belev miyuchad kulam ve'em b'neim pirid. Why we say Vayeshev Yisrael? Now Yisrael seems to be singular, yes, because they all went there with one mission. They understood what their mission was, to do mitzvahs, to learn Torah, to do certain things in order to draw out. That's why when somebody sometimes needs a child, there's a special bracha, there's a special thing that they have to do in order to generate the ability to have drawn out the neshama that's captured. Now we understand the words that the pasuk says they grabbed hold of the property. What does it mean they grabbed hold of the property? Vayechzu ba, they grabbed hold. Yes, they bought the property, they bought the land, but it doesn't refer to that. Vayechzu ba means they grabbed ba. What's ba? The sparks of kedusha. Because if it would have been referring to property, it should have says vayiknu arois ayorim v'sodois ubatim. It doesn't say that. It says ba. What's ba? Ba is a reference to the sparks of kedusha, the neshamas that were captured. And in order for them to have taken it, they had to have taken hold of it. And once they did, these nitzaitis hakedusha created neshamas. These were actual neshamas ubazeh, and that's why vayechzu ba. That's why when they grabbed hold of these neshamas, these nitzaitis hakedusha, then vayifur bayirbu. Kishi yisarbu nefashis. We have a rule: when the nefashis increase, yisrabu hanelavim. We know that there's a taisis that says there's a chamber in Shemaim called guf, and as every neshama has to come out of that chamber, a soul, a body has to be prepared for it. Right? Now, when you have a neshama that's captured by the tzara tumah and it gets released, right? So those neshamas have to go into a new body. And that's what it refers to, vayifru vayirbu moed. V'ayin ma shepir sham magid l'marik. And look what the Magid spoke to Rabbi Yosef Kairo. Now, Rabbi Yosef Kairo was zoichet to have a Magid. The Magid doesn't mean like a preacher, like the Magid says, a Shomesh Radron, or the Dubna Magid. No, the Magid was a Malach that somehow entered into the body of Rabbi Yosef Kairo and would reveal to him secrets. And he actually wrote a sefer called Magid Mesharim. It's in print today. You can buy it in a farm store. It tells us all the different things. Rabbi Yosef Kairo wrote down all the different things that the Magid told him. Pirush pasuk vayomas Yosef u'bnei Yisrael vayishritzu vayibru moed. And the Magid explains that the reason that Klal Yisrael needed to have all these paru vayifru moed, why they had to grow so much, was because they were creating all these new nefashos. So they were pulling out the nefashos from the tzada tumah. And in order to accommodate these nefashos, we had to have many children. And eventually, that led to the ability to have 600,000 men between the ages of 20 and 60, and they were able to get the Torah. So you see that this was all hand in hand, from Mitzrayim to Sinai. This was necessary in order for Klal Yisrael to actually become a Goy Gadol, and it's hinted in the pasuk Vayechzu ba. They grabbed hold of the neshamas that were captured, that were in the clutches of the tzara tumah, and as they pulled them out, they had to go into guf, to bodies, and that's why Hashem made a nes, vayifru, vayirbu ma'oid. Keni Yiratzon, we should be zoicha to the nes and to the oiris of Chanukah. Amen. Keni Yiratzon.